Imagine three friends. Let's call them Angel, Quinn, and Theo. It's a random Tuesday afternoon. They're the exact same age. They make the exact same salary. None of them have a rich uncle, none of them inherited a trust fund, and none of them are waiting on a secret lottery ticket. Today, they are each taking $10,000 of their hard-earned savings, logging into the exact same brokerage app and clicking the Buy button. One is buying the entire American economy, one is aggressively betting on the future of technology, and one is just trying to collect some reliable cash right now. If you spend any time on financial YouTube or TikTok, you've probably seen people screaming at you that their fund is the absolute best. They wave around spreadsheets, massive return percentages, and promises of early retirement. But here is the absolute truth that finance influencers rarely tell you. The winner of this $10,000 race won't be decided by which three-letter ticker symbol they typed into the search bar. It won't be decided by the expense ratio, and it won't be decided by the dividend yield. The winner will be decided by which one of them completely panics, because two of our three friends are about to make a catastrophic financial mistake, a mistake they won't even notice on day one. In fact, it's a mistake that won't actually hurt them until year 11, quietly, brutally, right after they've spent a decade bragging to everyone at the dinner table about how well their portfolio is doing. Today, we are taking a microscope to the three most popular investing strategies on the internet. We are going to track Angel, Quinn, and Theo over 30 years. No hype, no fluff, just the raw, unforgiving math. But I need you to keep one thing in the back of your mind as we go through this. Sitting right there on their screens, hidden in plain sight, was a fourth option, an option that nobody talks about, an option that could have saved all of them, and not a single one of them took it. Let's meet our funds, because the devil is always in the details. First, we have Angel. Angel is cautious, smart, and doesn't want to think about her money. She types in VOO. This is Vanguard's S&P 500 ETF. By buying this, Angel is essentially buying a tiny slice of the 500 largest, most profitable companies in America. She's getting Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, but also Johnson & Johnson, Walmart, and Exxon. She is buying the whole board. The cost? A tiny 0.03% expense ratio. On $10,000, that's $3. Not $3 a month, $3 a year. It costs less than a cup of coffee to own the American economy. We're going to call Angel's strategy the market. Next, we have Quinn. Quinn is ambitious. Quinn reads tech blogs and believes artificial intelligence is going to take over the world. Quinn types in QQQ. This is the NASDAQ 100. It tracks roughly 100 of the biggest non-financial companies. But let's be honest, it's a massive bet on big tech. NVIDIA, Broadcom, Tesla. Quinn doesn't really have a diversified portfolio. Quinn has a very confident, aggressive opinion about silicon chips and cloud computing wrapped up in a ticker symbol. It charges 0.18% in fees, 6 times what Angel pays. But Quinn doesn't care, because over the last decade, this fund has looked like a rocket ship. We're going to call Quinn's strategy the bet. Finally, there's Theo. Theo hates risk. Theo just wants to see tangible results. Theo types in SCHD. This is a dividend-focused fund. It tracks about 100 deeply boring companies. These are factories, banks, and the people who make your toothpaste. Companies that have steadily paid their shareholders cash for at least 10 straight years. It pays around a 3.3% dividend yield. That means Theo's big, thrilling reward on day one is that he will make about $330 in cash this year. It arrives in his account like a birthday check from his grandmother. Small, dependable, and honestly a little underwhelming. We're going to call Theo's strategy the checks. For the first year, nobody feels like they are competing. Quinn checks the NASDAQ like it's a daily horoscope. The market is up, tech is booming, and Quinn's $10,000 jumps to $12,000. At every dinner party, Quinn has a chart. Quinn has a story. Quinn has that very specific, annoying energy of a person who has confused a lucky bull market for a personality trait. Angel has nothing to say. Her S&P 500 fund did exactly what the broader market did. It's fine. It's unexciting. And Theo? Theo has the most boring portfolio in existence. He got his $330, he reinvested it to buy a few more shares, and nobody at the party cares. Let's be real. No one in the history of the world has ever walked into a bar, bragged about their 3% dividend yield, and been treated like a hero. So after year one, the emotional scoreboard is incredibly clear. The bet is winning. The market is fine. The checks are putting everyone to sleep. But as we are about to see, the emotional scoreboard and the actual financial scoreboard are two completely different things. And over the next decade, they are going to start disagreeing violently. Let's fast forward to year 3 and put some realistic tempered numbers on the table. And let me pause right here to be brutally honest with you, because this is the exact moment where most financial videos start lying to you. Nobody knows the future, so instead of cherry-picking the absolute best years, we are going to use realistic, historical long-term averages. Let's say Angel's market fund averages about 10% a year. Let's say Quinn's tech bet runs hotter, averaging about 12% a year, which it often does during good times. And let's say Theo's checks average about 9% total, assuming he diligently reinvests every single dime of cash he gets. 3 years in, Angel's $10,000 is now $13,300. Theo's is at $12,900. Quinn's is sitting at roughly $14,000. Quinn is winning. Quinn is smugly winning. If I ended the video right here, the takeaway would be simple. Buy tech, buy the NASDAQ, get rich. But 3 years is nothing. 3 years in the stock market is just the opening credit to the movie. The thing that actually decides who retires a millionaire hasn't even walked into the room yet. Here is the math that ruins people. Over the past decade, tech hasn't just grown at 12%. During the craziest bull runs, it was compounding at closer to 22% a year. Watch what happens when you take that 22% number and get greedy with the compound interest calculator. If you take $10,000 and grow it by 22% a year for 30 years, it doesn't just turn into a nice retirement. It turns into $3.9 million from a single $10,000 investment. You can completely understand why someone watches a TikTok showing that math and immediately empties their life savings into QQQ. That number is a drug. But it's also a massive lie. Not because the calculator is broken, but because no asset on planet Earth compounds at an uninterrupted 22% for 30 consecutive years. That 22% is a hot streak. It is not a permanent law of physics. If you look back just one bad chapter, back to the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s, the NASDAQ didn't go up. It fell by over 80%. And it took over 15 years just to climb back to the number it started at. 15 years just to break even. So the seductive $3.9 million fantasy, that's napkin math. It looks amazing until you realize that a napkin has never once survived contact with an actual financial decade. Before we get to the big crash that changes everything, we need to talk about what is happening to our 3 investors quietly every single day, the invisible forces eating their wealth. First, inflation. Historically, the U.S. stock market averages about 10% return, but inflation, the cost of groceries, housing, gas, averages about 3%. That means the real return, the actual buying power of your money, is closer to 7%. Inflation is the silent partner in all 3 of these accounts. It never says thank you. It never asks permission. It just takes its 3% cut every single year. When you factor in inflation, wealth builds much slower than the spreadsheets promise. Second, the fees. Remember how Angel pays $3 per year for VOO and Quinn pays about $18 per year for QQQ? Right now, that's a $15 difference. Who cares, right? Let's stretch that tiny $15 difference across 30 years of compounding growth. Because Quinn chose the slightly more expensive fund, Quinn is going to hand over roughly $7,000 more in fees than Angel over the life of the investment. And heaven forbid they had used an old-school financial advisor charging a standard 1% fee. That single lazy 1% fee would have cost them over $40,000 of their potential gains. The fees you barely notice in year 1 are the ones that rob you blind in year 30. But even with inflation and fees, by year 10, the race is taking shape. Theo, the checks, around $24,000. Angel, the market, $26,000. Quinn, the bet, $31,000. Quinn is still out front. The tech bet is working out. Everyone watching assumes it will just stay that way forever. And then the market does the thing the market always eventually does. It crashes. This is the part that no projection calculator will ever show you, because a stock market crash isn't just a number. It is a very physical, visceral feeling. Imagine it's year 11. The economy hits a recession. There's a totally ordinary, historically normal market pullback. Quinn's NASDAQ fund, being highly volatile tech, drops by 35%. In a matter of weeks, Quinn's $31,000 plummets to $20,150. Nearly $11,000 is just gone, evaporated, disappeared into the digital ether in the time it takes to develop a nervous habit of refreshing your brokerage app on the toilet. Meanwhile, Angel's S&P 500 fund drops too, but because it's a bit more diversified, it only drops 25%. It hurts, but it's not a bloodbath. And then there's Theo. Theo's dividend portfolio drops too, but right in the middle of the panic, right when the financial news networks are screaming that the sky is falling, Theo's dividend payment lands in his account, right on schedule.
The whole market is on fire, but the checks guy just got paid anyway. It's cash, it's real. And because the market is down, when Theo reinvests that cash, he is buying shares at a massive discount. Here is the ultimate test. This is the moment that decides the entire 30-year outcome. If Quinn does absolutely nothing, if Quinn just closes the app, goes for a walk, and ignores the market for 2 years, the fund will recover. The math will keep working. But Quinn spent a decade telling everyone about the tech revolution. Quinn's identity is tied to being the smart investor. Watching a third of your net worth burn to the ground overnight is not a spreadsheet event. It is a 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, heart-palpitating event. And most people, when they hit that 3 a.m. terror, do the one single thing that turns a temporary paper loss into a permanent financial disaster. They sell. There is a massive study done every year by Morningstar called Mind the Gap. It measures something absolutely brutal. It compares the returns that funds generate against the returns that the actual human beings inside those funds take home. And the results are damning. Over a 10-year period, the average investor underperforms their own funds by about 1.2% every single year, meaning they give up roughly 15% of their total potential gains. Why? Because they aren't robots. They get scared near the bottom and sell. They get hopeful near the top and buy back in. They trade on feelings. And the data shows something even crazier. The wider the swings, the worse the gap. People in calm, boring dividend funds like Theo only underperform by a tiny margin. But people in wild, exciting, volatile funds like Quinn underperform by nearly double. The volatility shakes them out of the ride. If you drag that 1.2% behavior penalty across 30 years on a $10,000 investment, it silently costs you nearly $50,000. $50,000! Not lost to fees, not lost to the economy, lost to the completely human act of flinching when things look scary. So let's turn the knife and look at the real weaknesses of all three strategies, because none of them are perfect. Angel's weakness, she thinks the S&P 500 is completely safe because it's 500 companies, but it's market cap weighted. That means a massive chunk of her money is riding on the exact same 5 or 6 giant tech companies that Quinn owns. She thinks she avoided the tech bubble, but she actually just bought a slightly diluted version of it. Quinn's weakness: the bet is only a great strategy if you possess the nervous system of a sociopath. A fund that can drop 40% in a year is only useful if you can watch your life savings get cut in half and literally feel nothing. Most human beings are not built for that. Theo's weakness: safety is never free. Over 30 years, Theo's conservative dividend approach will simply make less total money than the other two. He traded massive growth upside for psychological comfort and steady income. The invoice for his peace of mind is paid in the gains he missed out on. Let's finally pay off the promise I made at the beginning. Let's run the clock to year 30, assuming, and this is a heroic assumption, that all 3 of our investors held on for dear life and never panic sold. At year 30, Theo, the checks, lands around $133,000. Angel, the market, lands around $174,000. Quinn, the bet, climbs all the way to nearly $300,000. I know exactly what you're thinking looking at those numbers. It looks like Quinn just destroyed everyone and we wasted 30 minutes of our lives getting here. Buy tech, end of story, right? Wrong. Look closely at what Quinn's $300,000 silently assumes. It assumes Quinn survived the dot-com crash. It assumes Quinn survived the 2008 financial crisis. It assumes Quinn survived the 2020 pandemic crash, all without flinching once.
On a spreadsheet, the bet wins in a landslide. In an actual human life, it is the most likely to end in disaster because spreadsheets don't have nervous systems. You do. So who actually wins? It depends on who you are. If you are young, want one fund, and want to completely forget about it, buy the market, VOO. It is cheap, broad, and quietly makes people wealthy. If you have a 30-year timeline, an iron stomach, and you can swear on your life you would delete your brokerage app during a market crash, buy the bet, QQQ. If you need the money sooner, or if you know you are prone to anxiety and need to see physical cash hitting your account to keep you calm, buy the checks, SCHD. But remember, at the very beginning of this video, I told you there was a fourth option. There is absolutely no law in finance that says you have to pick just one. The ultimate strategy, the one that actually survives the real world, was to take that $10,000 and split it. Put a piece in the market for stability, put a piece in the bet for aggressive growth, put a piece in the checks for psychological comfort and cash flow. When you blend them together, you don't get the absolute highest possible return, but you get something much more valuable. You get a portfolio you can actually survive. When tech crashes, your dividends keep paying you. When dividends lag, your tech stocks pull the weight. The blended portfolio drops significantly less during a crash, which means you are infinitely less likely to panic and sell at the bottom. And that right there is the entire game. The real trap was never choosing between VOO, QQQ, or SCHD. The real trap is picking one just because a confident stranger on the internet yelled about it and then bailing the absolute second the market bleeds. Next time someone tells you they have the best index fund, don't ask them about the returns. Ask them what happens when it drops 35%. Because in 30 years, the gap between being broke and being wealthy will have almost nothing to do with the 3 letters you typed into a search bar. It will have absolutely everything to do with what you decided to do on your worst day. Pick a fund you like, but more importantly, pick a plan you can actually survive.